Good morning, everybody. So, caught me getting my stuff together. So, today we have a great workout planned. What we're going to start out with is a little band. So, if you have a band, let's go ahead and grab it. And we're going to start with it a little bit below your knees, but make sure it doesn't just sneak up to your knees during this exercise. The other thing to be aware of when you're doing this first series is if it starts to feel like you can't move your legs because you're getting tired, then I need you to just bring the band up a little higher and make sure that you've got free movement through your hips at all times and you're not feeling like you're trying to pull your legs apart. That's not what we want. So what we're going to start out with is no weight in our hands. We're just going to do a out, out, in, in. So imagine that you're standing in the center on a dot. I want you to take a step out to the right, a step out to the left, then bring your feet back in, right, left, onto the dot. So we're going outside the dot and then onto the dot each time. This is a weird pattern. That's why when you grab the weight, what I want you to do is pick a weight that's not too challenging, okay? We want to find something that activates your core but doesn't. You're going to do a side step action that's going to go a little bit forward and then a little bit back. So it's almost like you're walking down the aisle and doing a wedding march. We'll go one back and then we'll go one forward. And there you see I'm going a little bit forward, a little bit back, but there's more intention to me stepping wide and getting a lateral action as opposed to trying to go far forward with each step. So again, you should be starting to feel those hips burning a little bit. Keep that weight nice and high near your chin. Keep your elbows driving towards where the wall and the floor would be so that you're activating all these muscles to keep that weight in a nice floated position. Let's go up and back one more time. Whew. And let's go ahead and set the weight down for this next one. And again, use this as your opportunity. If you need to make it a little easier, if you need to make it harder. And then we're going to just do a side step tap action. No weight, just tap. So it's not the first action we did. It's much simpler. It's just step to the side, tap your foot, step to the side, tap your foot. Never putting too much weight into that center foot tap. We're always keeping the weight on the outside leg. Good. 3, 2, and rest here. So now, let's go ahead and bring the bands up above your knees now. We're going to do a squat stretch here. And when we're doing these, I want you to pretend that there is a wall behind you. I'm going to use the edge of my screen to kind of be my imaginary wall. And what we're looking for is as your knees push wide into the band, you're trying to reach your butt back, but simultaneously reach your head forward so that you can really open your hips and push your hips behind your knees as you go back and down and then come back up tall. Reaching the back of your neck forward without tipping forward. We don't want to come forward with our knees. We really want to try and tap that wall behind us. One more. Let's really push the knees wide. Rest for a second and let's grab a little weight now. So same position of the band on your legs. We're going to do the same exercise. I'm just going to face you this time as opposed to facing sideways. So put the weight up. Feel the elbows reach down towards the ground without letting the weight drop lower than your chin. And then push your knees wide as you send your hips back as far as you can. Try and stay upright. We don't want to bend over anything further than we need to on this exercise. We want to really think about keeping that weight up and not letting it break us down. We also want to make sure that if there were a hand right in front of our boobs, as we go down, we don't want to pop our chest up. We want to kind of push our boobs away from that imaginary hand to make sure that you're not buckling in the middle of your midsection. Good, give me one more. Pushing those hips out, pushing those knees wide, and then come up. All right, so let's go ahead and set the weight down, and you can finally take those bands off. And you're gonna get a little visit from my dog. Burley is coming in for the fun. He thinks that this spot is for him, not me. So hopefully he won't be too much in the way. But what we're gonna do real quick is a shin box, okay? So for the shin box, you're going to get down onto your side, let one hand be out to the side with both knees stacked up and both ankles stacked up. And then let the bottom leg slide forward, let the top leg slide back, and just feel, if you need your arm on the ground, don't be intent on taking it off and seeing how upright you can be. The thing is just to see and assess where you are right now. We're hoping to get you those hips moving better towards the end of the workout. So let's go ahead and swing to the other side, face towards the other direction as you let that bottom leg slide forward. When you look down, your toes should be even with the tip of your knee, and we want to make sure that your foot's resting comfortably on your thigh. The back leg is just sitting with the toe turned out. And again, if you need to lean on that arm, don't be hell-bent on trying to sit upright, because that'll just twist you through your back, and we don't want that in the morning. All right, so now that we've assessed your shin box, let's just keep it in the back of your head for later in the class to assess from. And now what we're gonna do is some side bridges. And so for this one, we're gonna get down onto one elbow. We're going to make sure our butt's kind of poked out a little bit. We wanna make sure we have a nice hinge back there. Our knees are stacked up, our feet are stacked up, and we've got our feet kind of cocked up. We don't want our feet to point toes. We wanna have them like we're standing on the ground. And so before we even start this exercise, the first thing we do is push our chest away from our elbow by pushing our elbow into the ground. And so now, once we've pushed the elbow into the ground, now push your hips forward. And you want your hips to be in a low position as you're pushing them forward. We do not want our hips to try and push up to the sky, because that's going to twist you through our back and our lumbar region, which can cause all sorts of problems. So we want to imagine there's a hand in front of our boobs. We don't want them to touch it, so we push them away while we simultaneously push our hips forward. And we lengthen through the back of our neck, leaving our chin slightly tucked. If you look down towards the floor, up towards the ceiling, and back into the center with that slight chin tuck, that usually helps you find a less stressful neck position. Good, and just keep pushing your hips forward as you push away from your elbow. 3, 2, and now just push your hips back by pushing away from your elbow. And let's go ahead and switch it to the other side. It was a very quick visit from Burley. We'll see how long it lasts. He usually comes and stays and tries to steal my mat, so we'll see what happens. So on this next one, same setup. Make sure your elbow's down, make sure your butt's kind of poked out, knees are stacked, feet are stacked and cocked. And let's go ahead and push your chest away from your elbow by pushing into the floor. And now drive your hips forward into the space in front of you while you focus on your ribs pushing away from the boob or the hand in front of your boobs. Good. Feel the length out of the back of your neck as you really drive length into your hips. We don't want any pinching of our knees together. We would much rather have the length coming from the middle of your thighs as you try and connect your ribs down and really feel that tighten you up through this part. Let's hold it for 3, 2, push out of your elbow as you send your hips back. All right, so for this next set, we're gonna do a little bit more of a progression with it. So if that one was just as tough as you could handle, then stay with that version. Don't worry about adding this into the folds. But this is going to get your hip moving a little bit better, and the target hip is gonna be the one that's on the bottom, okay? So I want your focus when I'm telling you to push something away or to turn something upright. I want you to focus on it being this bottom butt bone way in the back of the bottom hip, okay? So as we get into position, same thing as before. We need to first make sure that our knees are bent, feet are cocked, butt stuck out. Push away from the ground with your elbow to set the lat and ab connection, and then drive your hips forward to find your top position, just like before. Same position as we were just doing. And so now, what we're gonna do, if we're gonna add the action into it, I want you to push your elbow into the ground as you stick that bottom butt cheek that I talked about before up towards the sky as you look down. Now, push out of your elbow as you push your hip back forward into its normal position. There should be no rotation through your back. It should all be pushing out of the bottom of your hip as you push into the ground. And then you come back forward, always pushing through the elbow, whether you're pushing your hips up and towards the sky or whether you're pushing out of your elbow to bring your hips forward again. One more time. We always want to make sure it's driving from the elbow pushing into the ground rather than the shoulder feeling all the stress or something trying to twist within your pelvis. We never want the pelvis to lead it. We always want the push of the elbows to lead it. So let's go ahead and rest down. Swing to the other side for one more set. And elbow position is really important, guys. If when you were doing any of those sets, you felt like you had all the pressure in the top of your shoulder or it was going into your neck, that might be that your elbow's too close underneath you. So if that was the case, try changing that along the way. You don't have to get it perfect at the setup. If the setup feels a little off, set your butt down, reposition, make sure it feels like you're working this area more than you're working the top of your shoulder and into your neck. All right, so let's go ahead and start. Feet cocked, knees bent, butt stuck out. Push the elbow into the floor to activate your lats and abs. And now drive the hips forward as you find that top position. Now from here, we're going to push our elbow into the ground as we send our bottom butt cheek up towards the sky. And then we're going to drive our hips back forward by pushing through the elbow to get there. Remember, we're always leading it with the push of the elbow to send our butt upward like a beast, and then push out of the elbow to send our hips back into their normal square position. Let's do a few more here. If at any point you feel like you need to rest down or you just need to stop the movement and you just want to hold the regular bridge, that's fine too. Let's give me one more, pushing out of that elbow to send the butt up, and then driving the hips forward by pushing through that elbow. And now let's go ahead and sit down and rest for a second. So we're gonna go into a beast set next. And so for the beast, if you have a block, a yoga block handy, or a weighted ball, something that you can place on the small of your back as a bit of a challenge check or a bit of a test. We want to make sure that we're not just moving and wobbling and we don't know what's going on back there. And even if you put your block in the easiest position, which is the easiest position's flat, the second position would be this position, the third and hardest position is this position, okay? So even if you're in the first position, and it probably won't fall off your back unless you're really making some big hip junks, right? It takes a lot to move it off your back with that. But if it does stay on your back, listen and feel for the movement that it makes. Don't worry about always making it as hard that it's falling off all the time. You can learn a lot from that first position where you're just trying to feel that you don't want it to shift. All right, so let's go ahead and pick whatever position you're going to put it in. And we're going to do a beast. If this is your first time doing beast, you start in stationary. I may move in this set, but I want you to focus on just what I talk through without the movement. So as we push our knees off the ground and settle them wide, relaxing our toes, relaxing our ankles, pushing our hands into the floor as we push our chin and our neck away from the ground. If you're moving, you're going to alternate your arm and leg as you push each time. You don't want to try and lift one hand and then one foot. That makes it much more wobbly. Whoop, my block fell. Much more wobbly if you're working with one arm and one leg moving at the same time. Keep pushing your chin and your chest away from the floor the whole time to minimize how much you're using through your legs. Let's hold it for 5, 4, relaxing the knees without setting down, 3, 2, and then rest your knees down. Come back to whatever position off of your arms feels good. That may be shin box, or it may just be sitting. It may be sitting on your feet. Could be sitting on your block. whatever feels the best for you, that you're taking all the weight off your arms. We're getting ready to do a saw plank next. So we've got another beast coming, but we're gonna do a saw plank here. And with the saw plank, we're gonna do on our elbows. And so if you're not up for doing an elbow plank right off the bat, or maybe you've been doing this a while and you know the elbow plank is too hard for you to do on the ground, then move it up higher. Bring something up to elevate you so that you can focus on the hips not poking up, the shoulders not shrugging up. Make sure you're doing the hardest thing you do well, and if that means going up to an elevated surface, let's take the time for you to get to that spot now. All right, so our elbow plank is really a toe and foot mobilizer. That's what I want you to think about it as today, okay? So the whole purpose of what we're doing with this saw plank is to make your toes and feet stretch and release and work, and really have the common factor is that you're tight as a drum through your legs, your abs, your arms, but your toes are just pushing and relaxing and pushing and relaxing, and that's what's creating the saw action that we get into. So let's go ahead and put your elbows down onto the ground, sticking your butts up in the air. I want you to bring your focus to between your elbows to start. And now let's go ahead and step out as you bring your focus between your thumbs. And now push your chin and your chest away from the mat as you just push into your toes and then relax back into the balls of your feet. And so I always want you using your elbows, pushing into the floor to make you bounce back and forth on your toes. And so this is not where we're staying up on our toes and we're wiggling. We really need to try and push back onto the bunion knuckles of our toes each time we push back. We're trying to relax our ankles at the push point and then push out of the ankles as we go forward. Relaxing as we push into them, pushing a little bit as we go forward. And let's do this for about 5, 3, keep those knees nice and straight, 2, and let's bend your knees, stick your butt up in the air, and same as before, find a comfortable position where you're not on your arms so you can really recover before we get into our next beast set. So, great job. Hopefully, when you do the saw planks, or if you find that you're really stiff in your calves or your calves come into a lot of workouts, so you feel that calf burn, odds are we need to release some of those muscles that are just trying to do everything. So give that a real good intention of relaxing and pushing and relaxing and pushing, because if they're holding the tension on all the time, you're going to fight yourself and you're just going to end up with calf burn instead of releasing action. So let's go ahead and go into our last beast. Hands and knees, grab your yoga block, whatever your challenge. Height, maybe try and make it a little harder than the last one that you did. Whoops. Try putting it on your back first to start. And so if you didn't make it harder on the block placement, then make it harder on the beast. So maybe try walking with the bottom position. If you're at the same position or an easier position than the last time, make it a little bit more challenging for your action. And so as I go up into a beast, we can do a little bit of walking, pushing your shoulders away from the floor, pushing your knees loose and wide with each step, trying to release any tension in your knees, ankles, or low back, making each movement very small, like you're moving a centimeter at a time with each step. And then try maybe holding in a beast dog, alternate arm and leg lift. You don't have to lift them high, just trying to lift them off the ground is the first step. Or you just are holding a regular stationary, or you're doing your crawls. It's the hardest thing you do well. Don't try and keep up as much as you just remember that there's a lot of options and you don't want to get too comfortable with one option, because we need to be changing things all the time. All right, so our next thing that we're going to do is a push-up set. And for this one, I want you to go back up to an elevated position. So even though I might be able to do my push-ups on the floor, I find that it's still really helpful to use something a little bit elevated so I can focus on what's really important and not get lost into what can kind of start getting traumatized through the push-up when we're asking too much without the right stability to support it. So we're going to do some 30-second sets of push-ups in the elevated position. So even if you're somebody who would typically do your push-ups on the floor, I urge you to try coming up to at least, even if it's not a chair, like about a foot off the floor. Just make sure whatever you're on has enough width on it that you can get your hands outside of your shoulders on it. You don't want to try and do this in anything too narrow. And so the first one that we're going to do is alternating arm lifts. So once you get into your plank, which when we step into our plank, make sure our heels are loose and off the floor. We're straightening our knees as much as we can. We're pushing our shoulders away from our hands. We're pushing our neck with a tucked chin, slightly tucked chin, away from the floor or the chair. We're pushing our shoulders away from our ears so it relaxes us into our hips without letting them poke up. And just keep pushing everything away with your upper body as you lengthen everything through your lower body. And now lift one arm as you hold that position, and then put that arm down, push through that same arm as you lift off the other one. So it's not just a lifting game, this is a push. Make sure you don't get lazy in the push, because that's where all your strength is. Make sure your shoulder blade is pushing away from your hand as you're keeping your knees straight. Keep switching every 5 seconds, just switch. 3, 2, and rest by stepping in. Let your arms release out. If you'd like, intertwine your fingers behind you. Reach your arms to a long position and keep them along your body as you just try and chin tuck slightly and find length through the back of your neck, space between your shoulders and your ears. Keep your ribs anchoring down. Make sure we're not popping and lifting through this. Good. All right, so let those arms loosely hang down by your side. Shake out any tension. We're going into the same exercise, but this time instead of lifting your hand first, you're going to lift one leg first. And I'm going to show you real quick while I'm right here. When I lift my leg, it's going to be more like I'm lengthening my heel off the ground. I don't want you to think you're lifting your leg up away from the floor. So if I were in a plank and this is the floor, don't lift your leg like that. Lengthen your heel to lift so that your toe is maybe that far away from the floor. Okay, so please don't lift your hip too much. All right, so let's go ahead and get back into our position of plank. Find those straight knees, find those loose toes, push your neck and your chin away from the chair, whatever device you're on. And now lengthen one leg just a ½ inch off the ground. And then switch. Lengthen the other heel off the ground. Make sure there's no bend in either knee. You're keeping your knees really locked in straight. You feel your quad really working to keep your legs straight, and keep pushing your chin and your chest away from your hands. Good. And if you'd like a little bit more challenge, try adding the opposite arm and leg lift. So it's almost like a bird dog. Make sure that you're pushing away from the floor with your chest, and you're not trying to lift too high as much as you're feeling the balance of what you're pushing through. And if you can't do that, go ahead and rest. And if you can't do the alternate arm and leg lift at the same time, then yes, you would have stayed with what we were doing with the heel lifts. All right, guys, so we have one more set in the elevated position before we go down to some push-ups on our hands and knees. And for this set, I want you to do some push-ups. And my push-ups may be a little different than what you've been taught in your push-ups. So I'm going to show you while I'm in front of the camera. When you're doing your push-ups, your hands should start right underneath your shoulders like you normally would. But instead of your elbows going out at a 90-degree angle, I would like your elbows to go out at a 45-degree angle. Not pinching your sides, not pushing your elbows out wide, just focusing on when you have those elbows reaching away from the body in that 45-degree angle, you'll feel all these muscles engage. And so that's why I want this angle to be what you do your push-ups in, not this, not this. All right, so let's go ahead and do a set. Go ahead and find your position onto your elevated spot again for that plank. Keep those knees straight, relax tension in the ankle toes, push the chin and chest away. Good, keep the shoulders open as you're pushing away from your hands. And now just bend your elbows just a little bit in that 45-degree angle and then push everything away. We're releasing the elbows as we come down, but everything else is trying to push away from the floor. It's like there's slugs in front of your face and your hips and your chest. And you don't want any one part to touch and drop down more than the other, or you're going to touch the slugs. And the slugs are right in front of you, so you don't want to try and drop fast into them. You want to try and slowly just lower your elbows and then push away from the slugs. Give me 2 more, keeping the chest and wrist pushing away from each other. 3, 2, and step on in and rest. Perfect. So go ahead and grab a little drink of water before we make our way down to the floor. And so for this next set of push-ups, take your time getting down to the floor. Shake your hands out, release any tension. And when we get down to our hands and knees, I want you to get down there, but then I want you to sit back onto a comfortable position. And we're going to kind of talk about what we're going to do. And I also would like you to have a band if you've got one. Let's have a band handy. It doesn't need to be your super toughest one, but it also doesn't want to be your lightest one. And so find your position, wherever that's going to be, and sit back and relax for a second. So when we do this next set, we're going to put the band right below the elbow. We don't want it on the elbow and we don't want it above the elbow. And everybody's bands are a little different. So if you have a rubber band and it rolls a lot, this may just be a very frustrating endeavor for you. And if that's the case, just take it off and imagine that you have the band on, like some other people may be doing because they don't have a band. Because it's not worth getting so frustrated and having it roll all over the place, because that's going to change what your focus is on the exercise. So let's go ahead and put that band right below your elbow. Find yourself into your hands and knees with your toes slightly rolled under. If you have any pain there, you can let your feet relax flat on the floor, but I would prefer that you have a little bit of your toes on the ground. And so first, before we even start, let's just talk about what our position of our top position should look like. So a lot of times this is where people stop at the top, and I don't think you can see it from this far, but essentially there's a big valley that's between my shoulder blades and my head is kind of sunken towards the floor. So make sure that we're gonna practice this exercise a little bit by letting that valley pinch between your shoulder blades, and now push your neck and your chin away from the floor. Push your shoulder blades away from the floor, and then let it all sink back down again. And so I want you to do 3 or 4 of those, really pushing your chin, pushing your chest, pushing your shoulders away from the floor, and then letting everything sink down. Your elbows are staying straight this entire time. They should not be bending right now. This is not your push-up. This is just our prep to make sure that you really understand the cue that I'm giving, that your chin and your chest are pushing away from the floor. So let's do 1 more. Push your chin and chest away from the floor. Make sure you're not reaching and looking up. Your chin is slightly tucked as you're pushing those hands into the floor. And now from this one, push your elbows into your band, out a little bit wide into that 45, and then push back up. So just like in the first set of push-ups that we were doing on the chair or on the elevated position, you're releasing your elbows and then pushing away. Imagining the slugs stay in front of your face the whole time so that you don't end up adding that valley into your push-up. You should have your head pushed away from the ground even at the bottom of your push-up. And that means that you may not be able to go as low because you feel your head slide into that space. So make sure that you limit how low you go to how far you can keep your chin and your chest pushing away from those slugs, and feeling your arms releasing and pushing with each of these reps. Give me one more. And then let's go ahead and come on back. Whatever position takes you off your arms is fine with me. We're done with the band, so you can set that off to the side. We're going to do one more set of these push-ups, and with the set of push-ups, I want your focus to be on the elbows being the loosening hydraulic, the thing that moves and functions freely while the body remains tight. All right, so let's go ahead and find our hands right underneath our shoulders, knees directly underneath your hips. And just in case anybody missed it on the first set, I do not want this position of push-up during these sets. This builds tension into your lower back. It doesn't help your core, in my opinion, fire in the way it should. It just teaches your hip flexors how to do the work. So I want this position of a push-up. If you really don't like the being on your knees, then you can go up to an elevated position, and you can continue to do everything that we're doing on our hands and knees up on your feet. So let's go ahead and give me a nice elbow dropping loose and long, and then push away from the ground. Keep your face out of the slug plate as you push and lower yourself to the ground. Whether you're lowering or pushing, you're still trying to keep your chin as far away from the ground as you can. And that means by slightly tucking, not ever by looking up. Good. 3 more. Feeling those abs stay tight. Feeling the shoulders locked away from the ears. Feeling the arms as the only thing that releases and then pushes. And let's go ahead and sit on down, off to the side, into a shin box. Let's just do a little assessment, see how you're feeling versus the beginning of the workout. Again, if you need a little bit of lean, please don't try and sit upright, but I can tell that my hips are moving a little bit better than they were, because it just feels much easier to sit in my upright position. And yep, and that's in both of them. And so again, don't force the assessment, just feel the assessment. Our next thing we're going to do is going to be a little bit more of a work set. So we're going to come up to our feet. You can grab some water if you need it. We're going to need a little bit of weight for this one. So once you're up on your feet and grabbing a little water, I'll talk you through what we're doing so you can decide what weights to grab. But go ahead and let's come on up. All right, so what I want on this one is we're going to do a little bit of an elevated squat. So if you've got any jewelry on or any watches, either turn them around backwards or take them off for this set. If you've got kettlebells, if you just got dumbbells, it doesn't really matter. They're not going to rest on your wrist, so it won't hurt. But if you're using kettlebells, you'll want to have your wrists clear of anything that might push into them. And so you have a choice with the kettlebells or the dumbbells. You can either hold the weight at this position as we do the squat the whole time. The arms are not going to move from their position during this squat, okay, guys? So you can either hold them up like that, or if that's just a little too challenging or you don't have the right weights, you can hold one weight up like this the whole time during the squat. Okay, so the hand position is up to you and your supplies. If you don't have any weights, then I want you to just imagine you have really heavy weights right here. Feel what you might have to do. You'd have to like support those heavy weights. And so it's not as good. I know that it doesn't feel the same. But if you don't have weights, your hands are still going to hold in this position the whole time. Okay? So let's go ahead and pick your poison, whatever weights you're going to use for this set. If you're going to be using these weights in this position, I need to make sure that your wrist looks like this. It never looks like this, and it never looks like this. We don't want our elbows out to the side. We want a vertical elbow hand position with a straight wrist, and that may cause a little discomfort in your wrist, but I'd rather a little temporary discomfort in your wrist rather than long-term problems that we have to deal with, like carpal tunnel or anything like that. So let's go ahead and give me some squats with that elevated arm position. Hips open, push away from the floor. Hips reach back, push the knees wide as you're going back. Always focusing on length at the top like you're in a plank, and then width at the bottom, opening your hips. We want to open your hips with the set. We don't want our knees sliding forward. We want our hips driving back and our head reaching high with a chin tuck. 3, 2, and rest your arms down. Set the weights off to the side for a second, or right out of the way. The next one we're going to do is a little bit of a reverse squat. And for this one, if you have your ball, you can use your ball slams. So if anybody knows what that means, if you got a slam ball that doesn't bounce or something that you can slam into the ground, you can use that here. But I'm not going to use that today. I'm actually going to use a band. And so with the band, and so again, if you have the ball, you can grab it. But I'd also say, even when you do the ball, if you've got it, do at least one set of these with the band instead of the ball so you can feel what the difference is. We're going to do 3 sets through of this. So we just did 1 set of the squats, we have 1 set of the ball slams, and then we're going to repeat it 2 more times. So what I'm going to do a slow motion demo real quick. I want your arms to reach up, but I want to make sure your ribs and shoulders stay anchored. So this is not the top. This is the top. So I'm pretending I have a ball in my hands, and I'm just gonna slam the ball down to the ground while I keep my pressure in the band and my elbows drive straight. They're going to be landing in between my thighs. That's the position that you want your arms to slam to. I don't want your arms behind you because that's going to round your back. I don't want your arms throwing out in front of you because that's going to put pressure into your back. I want you to go from a tall position with your abs tight to a beast butt with your arms touching the inside of your legs, and always finishing with straight elbows. All right, so let's go ahead and do a set of these. So reach up tall hips, ribs down, and stretch the band and slam the ball between your legs. And then reach it up, keeping your ribs and shoulders anchored, and slam the ball with your hips going out wide and your knees going out wide. This is a fast, forceful exercise. Make sure you do not round your back as you slam the ball. We want our chest upright, but we want our abs tight, and we want to be pinching our arms to our body at the end of it. And reach and slam it down. Give me 2 more. Little tension on that band. Reach and slam. We're not jumping here. We're just feeling the explosion going backwards as we send that power through our body. Beautiful. All right. So let's set the band down. The position that our arms are going to be in this time is going to be in a suitcase position. But I want only 1. So a suitcase position can probably warrant a little heavier weight. But make sure whatever weight you choose for this set, this is the action that we're going to be doing. Don't start yet. I just want to show everybody what we're doing. This action, there should never be space between your bell and your leg. Your leg is pushing the bell wide. If whatever bell you choose causes your body to twist and you can't use the proper muscles, excuse me, to keep it stable and keep it square, ooh, I feel some pollen coming on, then you need to lower your weight a little bit, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and set your weight down for a second. Sorry, I needed to get a little drink of water so I don't cough through the whole thing. And We're gonna do 5 on each side, 2 times. So let's go ahead and pick your weight up with good form. You've only got one. Reach the opposite arm towards your hip or past your hip as you're going into that squat. Push your hips back. Making sure your knees don't slide forward at any point. Feeling your hips open as your knees push wide and push into that tall plank position. Let's switch it to the other arm. Feel the opposite abs engage as you put that weight over there. And now reach the back of your head over your body as you send your hips way back. Making sure that no part of your foot leaves the ground except your arch. When your knees push wide, you should see your arch kind of lift off just a little bit. That's okay, but no knuckles, no toes, no heels lifting. All right, let's switch it back to the other arm. We've got 5 more on each. Knees push wide, arches lift, head lengthens out, and then come up tall. Knees push wide, hips push back. Keep your abs tight at the bottom. 2 more. Pushing that bell with your knee to make sure you don't break in at any point. Switch to the other arm. We've got 1 more set. Keeping your body square. This is a great anti-rotation exercise to make sure that you can withstand whatever action you do without twisting and bending in places that your spine doesn't want. Give me 1 more. And then let's set the weight down with nice form. Same thing. Grab a little drink of water. Move away from your weight for a second. Let your legs shake out. Release any tension that you have. So the next one, oh, we've got our ball slams. I almost forgot. So grab your ball, grab your band, or just pick up your pretend ball here, because if you don't have one, it's just as good, okay? So let's do 10. Reaching up tall, little stretch on the band, ribs anchored, shoulders down, and then slam your arms straight with your hands touching the inside of your thigh. Reach back up, ribs anchored down, slam your hips back. Pushing width as you straighten your elbows, keeping everything locked together, never coming apart at the top, never coming apart at the bottom. Making sure those knees loosen and widen with each squat, and they never slide forward. It's like there's a chair right in front of your knees, and as you go down, you don't want to hit the chair. Give me 3 more. Make sure those elbows are going straight at the top and at the bottom. 1 more. Beautiful. All right. So go ahead and drop your band off to the side. Grab a little drink if you need it. We're going to do 1 more set of squats. And with this set, you have a choice. You can either do a shoot through, which, if you're not sure what a shoot through is, this action is a shoot through. When we pinch our sides with the sides of our arms, and then we shoot it up with our hips. Our elbows and arms do very little except for just guide the weight and let it slide up right through our hips. So that's the shoot through. If you're not quite comfortable with a shoot through yet, then you're going to do a regular squat, keeping your wrists or arms in contact with some part of your body. I do not want your arms to drift away as you go down. It's almost like if I were to set this weight down, it would be down between my heels. We never want the weight to feel like it's going down in this region out here. All right, so if you did those with me, you got an extra set in. If you didn't and you were smart and you were waiting for me to go through the demo, let's get our last one in. I'm going to do a shoot through set, but just remember, the bottom of the shoot through is the same as the normal action without the shoot through arms of the regular squat. So let's go ahead, go down, grab your weight, and widen up your hips. And it's all about hip power. It's all about how fast I can get my hips to get straight if I'm doing the shoot through. If I'm not doing the shoot through, it's about how much can I open my hips going down without letting my toes or heels lift off. It's about keeping my arms pinched to my sides and making sure that I don't let them drift as I go down. Give me one more. And then rest your weight off to the side. All right, so what I'd like to do next is a little bit of a toe stretch. So we can set our weights off to the side. And if you cannot get down onto your knees and do this, this is the action that we're going to be doing on the next one. So if that is just like, not going to happen, then your alternate is finding some place where you can kind of do a beast with your toes bending. And so you can go between a plank and then just bending your knees wide and letting your toes stretch. So it's kind of letting you take some of the pressure out of the knees. But if all that does is make you feel your knees and make you feel pressure anywhere else other than your toes and feet, then just go ahead and hang out to the side for a second. Do a little ball rolling on your feet while we do this exercise. All right, so tuck your toes under. Knees are kind of wide here. And just sit back onto your feet. Try and relax your toes, relax the arch, relax the front of your ankle. Keep your body tight and make sure your butt is open and the crack of your butt is nice and spread. We don't want to feel like we're tucking or pinching that together because that'll go into our back. So just again, remember to let that butt relax as we sit down onto our heels. And now come on up. Bring one foot forward. If you couldn't do that very comfortably, then just stay with that one. Do it a couple more times. Don't worry about progressing it further. As I bring my foot forward, it's very close to my other knee as I sit back onto that same toe. So this is a single leg toe stretch. We call this a cowboy stretch. It's something that really works on your toe and foot mobility, and we need to make sure that if things like this are just really stiff and tight, then we have to get through to them. You know, we can't just keep letting them get stiffer and tighter. Those are the things that really impede our balance as we get older and as we try to push ourselves, and that imbalance just limits us and our abilities. So what I'd like next is we're gonna do a little bit of a stretch real quickly before we do that stretch, because I think I'm running close on time, and if we run out, then I apologize. I didn't start my timer right off the bat, so I think I'm a couple minutes off. But just go ahead and do a quick shin box and just feel, did that hip opening series change it for you? Did it make it a little bit better by adding the weight into the equation? I know my hips feel a little bit looser in that shin box now. So just remember, all these things should always make positive changes into the shin box. If you feel like you go backwards, then that might mean that either the exercise was done improperly or it was just too hard for you and you couldn't focus on what you needed to. So just keep that in mind with your shin box assessments. All right, so this one is for one of my friends and it's actually off of a post that I put on Instagram or Facebook. And so she was asking me about it, and so I figured I'll finish class with this one because I think it's as good a thing to finish on as any. And here comes Burley again. He heard at the end of the class coming. Oh, and we have Kayo. Hi, Kayo. Nobody hit the camera. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to step into a band that I have attached over on this side. Burley, Kayo, hi. If you'd like, you can go ahead and go away now. Yeah, hi, I know. So you're going to put whatever hip you have the band on down onto that knee. So I want my hip to be facing the band the band attachment. I do not want to slide forward into this stretch. I want to stay nice and tall in my hip. And so I have a second band here. If you don't have a second band, just work on staying tall and just trying to push length into your hip. And feel that stretch that comes through the middle of your groin. And now move the front leg out to the side a little bit and just gently push yourself away from that knee as your hip stays straight and upright. So it's like you're pushing into an A-frame position as opposed to being on the outside of your kneecap. You're pushing yourself to the middle edge of your kneecap. Burley doesn't like this one. And then if you'd like to add the second band, you're gonna pull with the same hand as the knee that's on the ground to create a row pull. And I know you can't see anything. Burley's butt looks great, doesn't it? But essentially what you're trying to work on here, stretching the front of your hip, engaging your core, making sure that everything is square to the surface that you're facing and you're never pulling yourself in a twist. And so that's all I really have for you today. I hope you have a great weekend. Make sure you get the other side of your leg and do the other side if you like that stretch. And I'll see you next week. All right, guys, have a great 4th of July weekend. Happy Independence Day.